Hi everyone, welcome to the A Life of Education podcast. We're here obviously with Keith, myself and Zeta Yarwood, who is a life coach.
That's right.
Yeah, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so originally came to Dubai in 2007. So I've been here just over 10 years. When I first came out here, I was stuck in a job that I hated, which was recruitment. And in 2009, God, someone, the universe, basically gave me a kick up the butt that I needed to get out of this job, and I was made redundant. And in that process of being made redundant, I got some real clarity around my values, what it is that I wanted out of my life. I got myself a coach and started to build a vision for what I wanted my life and my career to look like. And I'd originally done my degree in psychology. So the human behavior space, the coaching space was a very, very natural area for me to move into. So to cut a very, very long story short, I basically started becoming a coach in 2011 and had to go back into full-time employment to build up a financial cushion before I could actually go into full-time coaching, which was 2014. And so basically since 2014, I've been coaching, and that has been a variety of life coaching, career coaching, and leadership coaching. So what does that mean? Essentially, all I do is I help people to really get clarity around what it is that they want to get out of their lives, what it is they want to get out of their careers, and the type of leader that they want to be. So we create a vision, and then what we do is we do an objective assessment of, well, where are you now? What is stopping you from being where you want to be? There's obviously going to be obstacles and challenges, and we need to kind of identify those, remove them, and then we clear the pathway to get you from A to B. And that's what I've been doing for the last 4 years.
Wow, sounds rewarding.
Really, really rewarding.
A huge change from recruitment.
Absolutely. Much more aligned to who I am as a person.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
What did you not like about recruiting? Why didn't you go back into recruiting?
Oh, interesting. So when I was in recruitment, we're talking like 2006, 2007 when I was in London. So the working environment was very cutthroat. It was incredibly sales driven. So the reason I took recruitment is because I thought I was going to be helping people to get a job, as well as get paid really nicely for it. But the thing is, if you want to get paid really nicely for it, you kind of have to be good at it. And I really was not good at it at all, because I was not sales driven. I wasn't target driven. I wasn't money driven either. So I was really, really struggling in this role where other people were really thriving. And the reason being is because the role, the job, the industry just didn't align to my values. My values of helping people and making a difference and love and all of these other values. Recruitment, just for me, I found it too difficult to try and align my values to what it is that I was doing.
So what advice would you have to somebody in recruitment who's not good at sales, who's...
Get out! Yeah.
The idea of happiness and fulfillment really is, number one, getting clear on what is important to me, and that's your values, right? So what are my key drivers? What are the things that really motivate me? The moment you get clarity around that, you can start to say, right, so what are the careers out there that might align much more closely to that than recruitment? And also you've got to take into consideration, what are my strengths? You know, what am I naturally quite good at? What are the things that people say to me? Oh, you're so good at that. Oh, you know. So when I was a teenager, when I was in my 20s, people always used to say to me, you're a really good listener, and you're really good at giving advice, and you're also really good at making me feel very comfortable. Those are just hints and clues that you kind of pick up along the way that can really tell you where you might be naturally a really good fit.
Well, for fitness, it's interesting for fitness professionals. A lot of the time you see people migrating out of office jobs and into fitness careers. And they do that because there's no passion, there's no love left in what they do. Yeah. And they've been really interested in fitness and interested in helping other people and things like that, and they migrate over to becoming a personal trainer or a Pilates teacher or a yoga teacher. So you see that transition a lot. Do you have any advice for people that are on that path?
Well, I mean, again, I would probably say before you start doing something like that, if you really want to make a business out of it, you have to identify your skills gaps. right? So what is it that you're bringing to the table already in terms of your know-how, your knowledge, your skills, your experience, and where are you not so strong? What are your skills gaps, and what is it that you need to do in order to fill those skills gaps? Is it get qualified? Is it to get some experience? Then you also need to be looking at it from a financial perspective, because if this is going to be the way that you make a living, you've got to be able to monetize it. So who's your target market? Who are your competitors in that market? I never say look at your competitors as a threat. Just look at what they're doing and maybe look at it from an inspiration point of view. You know, what do you really love about what it is that they're doing? Can you do something similar but put your own spin on it? So it's all fair and well being really, really super passionate about it, but if you're actually going to make it become your source of income, you've got to be able to monetize it. So really, you've got to look at it from two angles. How do I get my passion out there into the world? And also, how do I monetize it? And those are the kind of two things that you've got to be looking at.
So like getting qualifications is one of those facets.
Depends on what kind of industry that you're in and what it is that you want to be doing. But generally speaking, if you're going to be looking after someone's mind, someone's health, someone's body, you absolutely want to get qualified.
Yeah, absolutely. We
100%.
talk about a lot. And this is why Aloe's here, really.
Yeah, I think as well on what you said about people who want to, the love has disappeared from what they're doing in their white collar job. I also think I see people coming in who have made mistakes. They've neglected their own health.
Oh, 100%.
They've made mistakes. They've put something else they've prioritized something else ahead of themselves. And now they're like, well, that's been the toxin in my life, so I'm getting rid of it. And now I need to work on myself. Like, I need to get fit, I need to get healthy, I need to change my hormone balance, I need to do A, B, and C. So what better way to do it than to teach myself, than to learn? Yeah. And that's where, you know, there's getting the qualification for the sake of having the piece of paper to turn to a potential employer and say, I'm good enough. And then there's getting the qualification so you know what you're supposed to know. And you know, like, firstly, the rules of the industry that you're going into, like the health industry, you need to do this, you need to do that, but also so that you can then impart that knowledge on the people that you're trying to help. So yeah, definitely the kind of the qualification, but also just because like you said, there's different industries. Not every industry has an entry level qualification that you can go and do, and I sort of think sometimes with some courses, the entry bar into the fitness world is a bit too low for the complexity of the general public's health. And then you have certain courses that just, off you go, there's your piece of paper there, and go change the world. Yeah. Because people pretty quickly realize they can't help everybody. And I think, touching on what you said, who's your target market? If you go to ask any newly qualified instructor or fitness or PT, they probably won't know, because they're deep down, their gut is telling them, I just need to be paid.
Right.
I just need money. My target market is anybody.
It's fear, right?
Yeah, like my target market is, if I see a man and he's in his 40s and he's got knee pain, he's my target market. Yeah. If I have a girl and she wants to go in a bikini contest, she's my target market, because I need to be paid. Yeah. I don't think people really spend the time to hone in on, like, my background is rehab. Okay. And it wasn't like a pre-planned, I sat down and planned it all. It's each step of the way, I just shifted more and more and more towards rehab and pain and helping people and doing injuries and whatever else. So now I know my corner of the market, and I'm confident in it, and now I've just delved deep into learning more and more. But for people starting out, like, how do you tell them, firstly, because it's easy to kind of hear, okay, I need to figure out my values. How do I do that?
How do you figure out your values? You've got to sit down and you've got to ask yourself, just what is most important to me? There are a lot of values exercises on the internet, actually. And what I do with my clients is I literally give them a list of values, and I say, pick your top 10.
What would those words look like?
So those words would be something along the lines of love, respect, health, fitness, leadership, creativity, design, innovation, friendship, security, words like that. So when again, the internet is a beautiful thing, because you can literally just go and say values exercise, and it's the same. The exercises are all the same. It's just a list of these words. And My advice is don't use them as a specific exercise. Use them as inspiration, and then sit down and ask yourself in here, what is most important to me in here? And normally people will come up with around about 7 to 10 things. Once you've got clarity on that,
select
yeah.
So for the sake of this exercise, what would your 7 more common ones be?
Oh, it's varies.
Really, yeah.
It really does vary. So my top 5: love, friends, family, making an impact, helping people. So those are my top 5. So that just means that any decision that I'm making, I need to make sure that that decision is aligned to my values. Because if it's not, it's going to be a very painful process, and I'm probably going to end up regretting it later on down the line. So the values exercise just helps you to get clarity around the decisions that you're going to make moving forward. Now, they are quite general, and some of them are quite vague. So what you were just talking about there, about when you set up your business, it's really just about survival mode.
Yeah.
And that is normal for everybody. And I will say I was in exactly the same place when I set up my coaching business. I was literally coaching anyone and everyone.
I think that's also experience as well, because when you first start off, you're really hungry to get experience and to try and to see. And you kind of have to go a little bit into the deep end.
Yeah.
So exploring different clients and different people is a nice way to be able to then go, okay, well, actually, I'm not interested in this. I'm interested in, say,
I think
rehab.
you're totally right. I got lucky in that sense, because I worked in a huge gym in Dublin that had 80 treadmills. Let's just figure that out. 80 treadmills and 2 huge weights areas. So we got to see thousands of people over the course of a few years. And it was the rehab, the one that I kind of funneled down towards. So sorry, continue then with so you picked your 7 values, and then everything works from there. We were actually talking about cursing before the podcast, but are you familiar with the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a
Yes.
So
I love that book.
So that book, that's a deceptive title about that book, because that book means be careless and just tell everybody that you don't care.
But it's not.
But it's not.
All.
It's all about values. It's all about stripping away the non-essentials and focusing on your core values. But one of the things, the solid take home that I really took from that book was his advice is to not focus on things that are achievable at a point in time. Select your values around things that always require you to work on them. So you chose working hard, friends, family,
love, making an impact,
and making an impact. So on the family one, for example, his suggestion is don't choose family, because when you get a family, then what? You change the language you'll use to doing the best for your family, so that you have to always work on it. It's not a thing where, okay, you want to choose success as one of your values, right? Once you get successful, then what?
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing that I took out of that book, speaking about values, is like you need something that you can always come back to. You can always work on. So even if you're working in professionalism, like every step of the way, you need to be professional.
100%. So when I'm working with my clients, the question I always get them to say is, you've got to have a key focus filter, which is one question that you have in your mind. And that question needs to be structured in a way that exactly what you were just saying. It's not about right now I've achieved success. Now what? It's always, how can I achieve even more of this? Or how can I get even more of this into my life? Or how can I do more of this? So for me, it's really about how can I experience even more of my family in my life? How can I experience even more love in my life? What can I do that's even more loving than what I'm doing right now? So it's even more. So there's this never-ending, infinite.
It's also development and progression, so it doesn't allow you to stagnate.
Yeah.
You can, as an individual, keep growing and keep moving forward, which is important
100%.
in every field. Otherwise, you feel like, ugh.
Stagnancy is the death, right?
Yeah.
Like you've got to keep moving forward, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can become stagnant by reaching your value, by achieving the success. I've one client in particular who just through the gym, I do in small groups, so I don't tend to spend a lot of time with one-on-one people, like as in an hour, just getting to know them. We joke around, we have chat, we have fun. But the one guy, it kept coming up. He is successful. He's got a nice car. He lives in Dubai. He's got a he's got a high job. He is looking for the his partner, a soulmate, kind of at the moment. So he's in that world, but he's just like, I don't know
what's the next step?
I'm still not happy.
Yeah.
He's like, what do I do? And it's far be it from me to tell him what he needs to do. But I told him, look, I read this book in the past. It worked for me. Maybe you should read the book as well. But he's a perfect type where he's achieved he's got what he wanted.
The markers of success.
That he was working towards, that he was focused on. So now he's stagnated. But it's like, okay, what do we do? And I think that's where people then decide, screw it, see you later, recruitment. Like
career change.
Like last 5 years, I wanted to work hard, and I actually have worked hard. I've got to a point where, right, this isn't for me. Now I need to, I want to work hard. I want to be a hard worker, and then I need to pivot into something else. With your practice, like, what do you find is the most common issue that people are lost in, or that people are stagnated in?
Feeling stuck. It's this, where, and generally speaking, it tends to be stuck in terms of their careers. So they've been in a job for the last 5 years, 10 years, and they've realized it's just not fulfilling them in any kind of way, shape or form. And as a result of that, they're just feeling this stuck. And the stuck generally comes from money, in the sense of, I'm in a job that's paying me really, really well and allowing me to live a certain lifestyle. And I have a belief of, if I change, I'm going to go back to zero money and I'm going to have to start all over again. And I'm going to have to sacrifice my lifestyle and all of this kind of stuff. But also lack of clarity. I don't know what the next step is. I don't know what it is that I really, really want. And then also it's really about belief. Do I believe that I can achieve that? And most people just, they have all of these stories in their head that keep them stuck in their comfort zone. So, we're talking about the amygdala and the fight or flight response and all this kind of stuff. And it's, the amygdala interprets the unknown as the scariest thing in the world. So it will do anything that it can to keep you in your comfort zone. You need money, you need this, you need this, you need this. Stay where you are, we're good here.
Just so people know, the amygdala.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just in case. Do you want to explain that a little bit? We love the nervous system. We talk about
you
it
actually
a lot.
know it. You probably know it way better than I do.
I do, but from your
Caroline.
No, don't put me on the spot here.
Naughty.
I don't know the ins and outs of the amygdala.
So the limited knowledge that I have is it's just the part of the brain that is responsible for the fight, flight, or freeze response. So it's like your fear zone, right?
Yeah.
So the moment your amygdala perceives something outside of you as a threat, it starts firing off. And from a thought process, it starts firing off the thoughts that keep you safe, keep you stuck. And when people come to me, it's like, I know that I'm not happy where I am, but I don't know where I want to go. I don't know what I can do. I'm trapped by the golden handcuffs. And it's like, look, if you want to get out of this, you're going to have to break through your comfort zone. If you're willing to do that, I can help you. If you're not willing to do that, nothing is going to help you.
It's so similar in the fitness industry.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, but that's exactly the same. Like, look, there's going to be days where you don't want to show up. And there's going to be days where you want to just stop. And I'm not going to be cracking the whip beside you. But if you don't want to do it, then there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
You have to want to do it, but you have to be prepared for the really heavy negatives that come along with this, because you have been
change.
Yeah.
Getting out of your comfort zone is difficult, is scary, and it takes a lot of courage for someone to go and press the ejector button. Whether it's, I'm going to get out of this poor lifestyle and make the change. I'm going to move, locations because I don't like the area, or I'm going to move my job. I'm going to quit. I'm going to cut off that lifeline, because what's that Maslow hierarchy of needs? You're basically putting yourself back to the bottom level and then going again.
Yeah. Super scary.
So how do you coach people to go and do it?
Well, from a coaching perspective, it's okay. So let's have a look at the uncertainty. Right? So what are all the things that you're uncertain about? And then out of all of those things that are uncertain, where can you start to build some certainty? So if you're uncertain around your direction, let's start to build some certainty by doing some coaching around what are you passionate about? What is meaningful to you? What is purposeful to you? If you're uncertain about money, it's like, okay, so what steps can you take to start to build some money so that when you do make a transition, you've got a bit of a financial buffer? I'm not sure if I'm qualified enough. Okay, so what are some of the qualifications you can do so that you start to feel a bit more certain in that area? So it's just about building the hope, which comes through building the certainty, but also getting clarity on where am I going? And that where am I going has to be meaningful and has to be purposeful enough so that you are willing to break through the barriers of your comfort zone. If you don't want it enough, if it's not meaningful enough to you, if it's not purposeful enough to you, the moment you get to the edge of your comfort zone and you experience that, so that's the discomfort. So anything outside of your comfort zone is uncomfortable. So that barrier is super, super uncomfortable. And if you're not willing to go through that barrier, you're just going to go straight back. And then you're going to convince yourself that this is the right thing to do. And for a while, you'll feel okay because, like, you know, this is the right thing to do. You saw the edge.
I don't want to go.
Yeah, exactly. And then you get stuck again. So 6 months down the road, you just go and do a full circle. And people are just oscillating between motivation, demotivation, motivation, demotivation, motivation, demotivation.
That's really common.
Super common. Because they haven't got clarity on what's meaningful, what's purposeful, and they haven't built the hope. They haven't built the certainty. And so they just stay stuck.
And that's also quite demotivating for people.
Oh yeah.
I've tried, and I've tried 3 or 4 times to do this. This is the time. This is the moment I'm going to do it. Yeah. No, it's not. I'm not doing it. And then the 5th time that comes around, it's like, oh, I've been here before and I'm still stuck. So the more that you kind of stay there, the harder it is. I have one client who works in an industry, and I won't say what industry because it's quite unique, but everybody hates the job. Everybody in the office hates it. It's toxic. But she has a 12-month plan. She's got 2 courses that she's doing to move career. And she's now currently, she's quit smoking a year ago.
Brilliant.
And now she's kind of doing the health thing. But she also hates the job. But she's like, I'm so different to them in the office. I can see them. They're all grey. They're all like negative. They're all awful. They complain. And I understand. I see all the negative things. But she's like, it doesn't bother me because I know. It's now, we started 6 weeks ago. She's like, now it's 10.5 months. And every month goes by, she's like, she'll tell me a story, this person. And but I'm out in 10 months. Yeah. She is so happy. Yeah. Like she's in the job. She's got her money coming in, but she knows she can't wait for those 10 months.
Like a driving factor.
Yeah. The job has a purpose.
Yeah.
Right? There's a purpose to it.
It's now serving her.
It's serving her.
Instead of her serving the job.
Exactly.
And I look at her and I think, you know, to look at her walking down the street, you wouldn't think this is where her mind is. So she's awesome. I think she's a really good example of what you're saying she's doing. I don't know whether she had life coaching. I can't actually remember if we had that conversation, but like how did she get her inspiration? But I think she just had enough. And she just composed herself enough to go, right, let me look at the facts. This is what needs to happen.
Well, it's amazing that she actually knew, because it's like, do you guys remember when you were in high school and you go to the careers like counseling and they're like, you need to pick your subjects because you're gonna, this is your career, you're gonna choose your career,
and it's one career for life as well, right?
And it's like, I'm 16, how am I meant to know this?
Yeah,
and you have no idea.
Yeah.
I think this happens to people again somewhere in their mid like 30s where they're like, what? I've been doing this career now for like 10, 15 years. This isn't right for me anymore. I'm a different person. And then being able to find clarity. So the world is like, choose your subject, hurry up.
It's really interesting what you just said there. So you got to get clear on what values have I been basing my decisions on to this date? Societal values?
My parents.
Parental values, or my values? So the reason I got into recruitment is because I did my degree in psychology. I went to South Africa. I did some volunteering work. And when I came back, I saw that all of my university friends and school friends were investment bankers and doctors and lawyers. And I calculated I was going to be 35 before I was earning the same amount of money that they were earning at 25. And obviously my ego was just like, I'm not having that. Like, that's not that. I can't do that. And not only that, it was also like, well, what are they going to think of me going into the NHS and working in this NHS job? Because obviously in the UK, the reputation of the public sector isn't as, you know, sort of prestigious or whatever as the private sector. And so I convinced myself that I needed to get a proper job that paid really well in London, based on what society and all of these sort of belief systems that we pick up along the way. And obviously, because I was basing my decision on those values, it ended up being a really, really bad decision. And this is why people come to me at the age of 35, is because in their 20s, it's salary, job title, how good does it look to others, what are the career prospects, am I going to go up the corporate ladder really, really quickly? And then they get to 35 and they're like, what have I been doing this for? Because now I've got the money, now I've got the car, now I've got the house, and I'm still unhappy, and I'm still demotivated, and I'm still unfulfilled. And it's like, well, get clear on your values and start aligning your decisions towards your values, not what you think you should be doing, but what you want to be doing. And make sure that your values are the right values. Because, you know, if your values are very much fear-based, then again, you're going to start to make some pretty nonsensical decisions.
I agree with you entirely. How do people differentiate if this is a fear-based value or if it's really like, this is my purpose?
Yeah. So basically anything that's outside of you is going to be a fear-based value. So for example, I need recognition from others. That's a fear-based value, because all that means is until I get recognition from you, I don't get to feel successful.
Is that on your list?
Recognition?
No, these negative values.
Yes. So the idea is when someone talks through their values, I will always ask them, tell me more about this value. Well, I need to be recognized from others. Then it's coaching around, how do you start to recognize yourself? Bring it inward, make it intrinsic so that you're not reliant on it outward. So it's not fear-based. You get it from within, and you get your certainty from within. You get your solidness. I don't know if that's a word, but you get it from within rather than relying on it from the outside. When you are relying on it from the outside, it's fear-based. It's like, I need you to tell me that I'm okay. I need you to tell me that I'm good enough job. And if you don't get that, I'm going to be scared that I'm not doing a good enough job. But when you say to yourself, I know I'm doing a good enough job, then it's not fear-based. So, and then once they've realized that recognition is really much an internal process, quite often it'll change from their value of recognition will change, and they'll pick something else, and they'll realize that they don't need that recognition anymore. So it becomes less important. So it's not on their list of values anymore. And then they have a value shift. So value shifts happen all the time. And that's through a process of self-discovery, when you realize what is really, really important to you. And I have a lot of clients where their whole value system is based extrinsically.
So what would some examples of that be?
Recognition, financial security.
I was going to say security must be a
security,
big one, like a fear-based.
Absolutely. So whether that's job security, financial security, I mean, there's a whole, like, safety, just physical safety, physical security. You know, some people are super, super scared of the physical environment, and as a result of that, they choose to live in Dubai because the crime rate here is much lower than what they've experienced previously. Or, you know, people from Lebanon or South Africa, these countries where, you know, there is a lot of violence. And so their number one is physical security. So it's really being able to help them build that internally, and then saying, okay, so now we've built it up internally. Is it as important to you as it was previously when we first met? And quite often, and most of the time, it's no, that's not important to me anymore. And then we get to start to look at other values, making a difference, helping people, all of this stuff that's intrinsically driven. Rather than the stuff that you're waiting for outside of you to make you feel motivated, to make you feel good.
So what would what would you expect somebody with health concerns to tick off a list of extrinsic values? Does that question make sense? Do you know what I'm trying to ask?
No, say it again.
So yes. So how do you? Let's imagine somebody comes in and they're living an unhealthy lifestyle.
Yes.
Physically, like nutritionally, no sleep, too much work.
Yeah.
What kind of value markers would you be looking for them to avoid?
Well, first and foremost, what you've indicated to me there is that they are not prioritizing their health, so therefore health is not a value. Because you prioritize the things that are important to you.
And I think, sorry to interrupt you there, but I also think whether people like to acknowledge it or not, your lifestyle shows what you prioritize immediately.
100%.
So if I'm neglecting my health and working 50 hours, my work is my priority. And that's evident in the evidence without having to actually like verbalize it. It's just there. You can really clearly see.
Yeah.
So health is a big one. People, particularly as they get older, it's like work, family, I'm going to put myself last.
Yeah. So, you know, if someone comes to me and they say, oh, health is my number one value, and then they're overweight, they're smoking and everything else, and I'm like, you're BSing yourself. That is not your number one value. like your number one value right now is financial security. And as a result of that, that's making you decide to prioritize your work. And that work environment that you've created for yourself is super stressful. And so therefore you're now smoking and you're doing all of this other stuff. If you could just change one thing, one value that would allow you to move away from that, the health one has to be a priority. And that means living by that value. Every decision you make is this good for my health? Mm-hmm. And you know, and until they get into that mindset, their health will come last, because they're always going to be putting other things above that. And normally when you're putting other things above your health, you are probably in a position of fear of not making enough money, fear of not doing a good enough job, fear of getting fired, fear of whatever that might be. That is driving your decision-making process, rather than what is good for me. Like, if I made a decision in this moment right now, what would be good for me? Rather than what do I need to do so that I don't lose my job and I don't do this, and it's all this fear stuff. And when you listen to people like Wayne Dyer and everything else,
I love him.
I know.
I'm so sad he died.
Oh my God, I was traumatized.
I know. His book, like, man.
I know.
Excuses Be Gone. I read, sorry to interrupt, I'm digressing. But
No, I'm gonna.
No,
I've
honestly,
never heard of this man.
Yeah,
I didn't want to say that.
Excuses Be Gone. He's an amazing, this American man, just totally so deep and spiritual. Used to live in Hawaii. He passed away a few years ago. But I remember listening to his audiobook, and he read his own book, and it was live. And whoa, I got like chills. He was just so empowering and right. Like, he was just right. He was right. Like,
What was he saying?
basically the whole book is about, like, you can, what he gives loads of examples, and the way that he speaks it is just so powerful. But it's basically along the lines of, you can think this thought, like, I'm never going to be this, I'm never going to be that, I can't do this, and stay where you are. Or you can just go, well, I'm going to think, what about if I try? And just that shift in your mindset makes you see the world entirely differently. And the way that he coaches people in the audience, he gets people just to talk about things, and he just changes them, and they just start crying, and they're like, okay, well, all right, I'll try. Yeah, he has some amazing examples, but it's a powerful book. And
Wayne Dyer.
Yeah.
Dr. Wayne Dyer, he's awesome. Like, he's got loads of videos on YouTube. He's so funny. I think one of the reasons why he was so successful is because
he's natural.
He's so natural, but two, he just injects this lovable humor into everything that he does. So he lightens people up. He gets them to stop taking themselves so seriously and stop taking life so seriously. And when you do this, and this was the point that I was going to make earlier, is you're either making a decision based on fear or love. That's it. Love or fear. So am I loving myself in this moment? Am I being loving to those around me in this moment? Or am I basing this decision on fear? And so Wayne Dyer, it's all about love, right? He's all about self-love, loving others. I mean, he talks a lot about spirit, and some people resonate with that and some people don't. But the core messages is really just about understanding that the moment you can move into a position of making your decisions based on love and not fear, your life will change before your eyes. And so when we're talking about your values, it's really about where did this value come from? Is it because my mother and father projected this onto me? Like, my value used to be financial security because my mother was very much about financial security. So I grew up with, I can't spend money. I have to always have savings. I have to always have.
Do you think that was her fear being, like,
projected onto me? Oh, 100%.
And you just, like, picked it up?
Picked it up. We never had enough money.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, we couldn't spend money. And I picked that up. And so every decision that I was making was always about cost. Can I afford this? Not, is it good for me? And
is it good for me?
Is it good for me? Is this good for me? Yes, it is. But then you've got to clarify the difference between instant gratification and long-term gratification. So is this good for me? This chocolate cake is good for me because it's going to make me feel really good right now. Or is it good for me long-term? No, it's not. Buying like 15,000 dirham handbags. Like, is that good for me? Well, it's going to make me feel really good when I buy it. And then, like, 6 months down the road when you're in debt, oh, okay, now I don't feel so good.
Yeah.
So it's really about, is this really genuinely good for me and my soul? Or am I just chasing this dopamine fix from this thing, and then the dopamine is going to die off, and eventually I'm just going to go back to where I was anyway.
I need to buy a more expensive handbag next time. So how do you coach somebody to make their values intrinsic? How do you coach somebody out of the fear?
That's a very unique process for every single person, because you've got to understand what are they really scared of, and then you keep coaching them in this. Okay, so what would happen if that happened? What would happen if that happened? And then you get them to a point where they realize that these fears are just these nonsensical worst case scenarios that, generally speaking, would never ever ever happen. So for example, what are you really afraid of? Well, I'm really afraid of losing my job. Okay, so what would happen after that? What are you afraid of after that? Well, I'm really scared that I wouldn't be able to pay my rent. Okay, so what are you really afraid of? What would happen after that? Okay, well, if I can't pay my rent, I'm going to be living on the streets. Okay, so if you're living on the streets, what are you afraid of? What would happen after that? Well, if I'm living on the streets, I'm going to die. And it's like, okay, so if you lose your job, you're going to die. And then they realize that it's actually not the case.
I do that a lot with myself.
I've been guilty of that in the past, for sure.
We all do it. It's worst case scenario thinking.
But I get myself into that scenario. When I get to the end, I'm like, yeah, that's not so bad. It's all right. I'll do it anyway.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah, that's exactly the mindset to have.
It's beneficial for me in some instances. Yeah. Where I'm like, oh, I can't do this because... Yeah. And then I get to the end of it and I'm like, no, I can. What am I talking about? I'm stupid.
We are lucky enough that we're living in a society whereby the chances of us being left to die, very, very slim.
Yeah.
Right? We are very lucky. And anyone who's watching this video right now, also probably very, very lucky that would never, ever happen. Yeah. So use that as your point of certainty. You've achieved a certain degree of financial success, whatever that is for you, up until that point. If it all went to shit, then you know that you can do it again.
Yeah.
Right? You've done it before. You can do it again. And also... you have some security so that if you did end up losing your job, you've got either enough money or enough savings to sort yourself out, or you've got a family or friends who love you enough to help you through that period where you do get yourself back up on your feet.
Yeah. Have you guys ever read Rich Man, Poor Man?
No, but
So it's with Donald Trump and Robert Kiyosaki. So he at the very beginning, he starts the book by explaining how many times he went bankrupt and he had nothing, like absolutely nothing. And you hear all these stories of these people going like to nothing, to worse than nothing, to being like so in debt and pulling themselves out of it. Yep. And you can see that the end is not really the end. It's not the worst thing that's out there, and people can come out of it.
It comes to that antifragile theory. You aware of that?
Is it like the resilience?
Yeah, like the Nicholas Taleb or Nicholas Nassim Taleb. His name is some combo of that, but he wrote a book that basically talks about how it's called Antifragile, but he created the term antifragile because he starts the book with like, right, what is the opposite to fragile? And he's like, the language we use doesn't have a term to describe the opposite to fragile. Most people will think the opposite to fragile is strong or robust. But if you take fragile being if you shake, if you apply pressure to something, it breaks with the smallest amount of pressure. Something that's robust or strong or sturdy, it just withstands
a lot of pressure.
The pressure, but it doesn't get stronger.
Yeah, it doesn't change
it doesn't
as a result.
Okay.
So like, for example, if I was going to throw this glass, this is fragile. So if I drop it, it goes to the floor and it breaks. But if I do my phone, I throw my phone on the floor, the screen might crack. It stays the same structure.
But it doesn't get stronger.
It doesn't get stronger.
It doesn't adapt. There's no adaptive.
So the book that he writes
energy.
is about how he talks around you get stronger. People, brain tissue, strength, like adversity makes people stronger.
Growth,
you don't come out the
personal
same.
development.
You come out stronger. So by applying pressure, you learn. By losing things, you learn and you come back stronger.
100%.
And the book kind of goes through that. One of the simple examples, he's got two twin brothers. I think the example is they're in London. One works for a computer company, IBM, you name it. He's in his job, he's safe, he's got his salary, well paid. He's got his family, he's got his holiday pay, he's got his medical insurance looked after. He's climbing the ladder slowly and surely, and he's got his weekends off. He spends it with his family. Brilliant. His twin brother is a taxi driver. Okay. So his twin brother has to go out, work for himself. He's got to work late nights. He's got to work, he's got to understand the market. He's got to go to this part of the city at weekends, that part of the city when the event is on. he's got no security. So if he wants to take a day off, he's not going to get paid.
Yeah.
If he gets sick, he's got to pay for his own medical coverage. So when you look at that on paper, who's better off? And you kind of would say, well, your mind would go to the guy who works for the computer company. But then let's say both of them lose everything straight away. The industry changes or something changes and they both have to pick up and go again. Now you got to look at it as, okay, well now the taxi driver is a bit more advantageous position because he's used to working for himself.
Yep.
He's used to the hustle. He's used to the position of having to go out late at night. He's managing his life in a way where he's earning money by himself on his own 2 feet. He moves to another city. He buys another car. He learns the route. Off he goes. He's got the knack. The computer guy, he's got to go find somebody who values him enough to go, so he can be paid by their company to build their company. Yeah. So the whole book is about that. It's a brilliant book, but it terms the phrase anti-fragile because it's through adversity you get stronger. Yep. I think a lot of people talk about like the guys who go bankrupt a bunch of times. They have the toolkit. They know it's not the end of the world. They've been here before. But it's tough for the people who haven't hit rock bottom.
Yep. Yeah, especially because it's the unknown. Like you don't know if you can come out of that. Yep. And you don't know at what state and in what condition you're going to come out of that whole like ordeal.
Yeah. So the fear of failure. So there are 3 universal fears that we all have, right? So the fear of not being loved, the fear of being rejected, the fear of failure. So the fear of failure it's really interesting because it's the people who've never failed that fear it the most. So the people who have failed again and again and again, they realize actually, you know what, there wasn't a huge amount to be scared of. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but I didn't die. The world didn't end. People didn't laugh at me. And it's the fear of failure that keeps people stuck. Yeah. You know, that's what
sorry, I'm gonna talk about my accident.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
Yeah, well, do you know what's really funny? I talk about this so much, but Keith used to train me, so obviously we've spoken about this a lot. Yeah. But I was gonna say what was really inspiring for me after I was in hospital, and I was like, I'm never gonna walk again. I'm never gonna like move again. This is my life. Is I started following all these people on Instagram that were like in worse conditions. So I followed this guy called Aaron Wheels, oh bless him, who's a paraplegic, and he's basically, so he used to be like a bike rider and used to do all those tricks, and now he does it in a wheelchair. It's phenomenal. And then Amy Purdy, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right, so she's a para-Olympian who has both a double amputee, so both of her legs below her knee are gone, and she's a snowboarder, and she's one of the best in America. Amazing. And you see all of these people, and they've had these crazy things happen to them, and they come out so much more resilient. There's a girl, Paloma, she has one leg. She has an artificial leg. This is my Instagram, just so you know, secret insight. She's got one leg, and she's just rocking the whole world, like just she's amazing.
Inspirational.
But
it's inspiration, yeah. So you know, like, okay, this is the end, and people come out of it, and there's like paraplegic, bodybuilders, like upper bodybuilders that are,
But I've been in conversations with you and other people when you're telling them the story about your accident, and what, like, majority of the time, I could never do that. God, if that was me, I'd still be in a wheelchair. God, if that was me, I'd be drugged up on, that's what people think. If I had your accident, I would be at home, watching TV, just sitting in the corner, hating the world. Whereas, as you reply back to them, you probably wouldn't. Like, you'd probably just make a decision, that life, or get off your ass and go do it.
You would be surprised.
Really?
Yeah. So this victim mentality, the moment that they see themselves getting love and attention for their condition, on a subconscious level, they stay stuck because it's like, wow, I've never received this amount of love before.
Well, do you know what's really interesting? That's something that I battle with. I used to battle a lot with letting go of that, like letting go of not being that person. Yeah. Like, I talk about it a lot. Like, I'm not going to lie. I talk about it loads, but yeah, it was challenging and interesting. Like, I used to always call myself the disabled girl, and Keith was like, stop calling yourself
Don't
that.
give yourself
like,
that
you're
label.
fine.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, I had to call her the re-abled person.
yeah. Yeah, so we had like a whole year where I was like, oh, I'm just the disabled girl. He's like, but you're not. Like, you're fine.
Yeah, yeah.
And now I've like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, I got a weird foot, but
all
it's
about
good.
mindset, right?
Yeah,
The power
massively.
of the mind is amazing.
So just going back to this value system, once people figure out what their value system is, what next?
What next?
Like,
So then you kind of got to do a skills inventory. You got to be realistic. Like, am I equipped to do these things that are really, really important to me? So, I mean, helping people is quite generic, right? I mean, there are literally a million different ways that you could help people. So then you've got to start to do your research. Like, what are the potential careers or, ways in which I can help people? And then you've got to just pick a couple that you believe really do resonate with you. Remembering that until you actually try something, you'll never know. So it's always just a perception to begin with. But the idea is do some research, talk to people. You're like, that's the best way. If you really want to figure out what it's like to do something as a career, talk to someone who's doing it. And once you've identified what it is that you want to do, then you have to look at your skills. Like, am I actually equipped to do that right now? What am I bringing to the table? What do I know I have? And how do I get my skills up to a decent enough level that will allow me to transition into that? And that might mean putting the dream on hold for 2 years while you go and get some experience, or you get a qualification, or whatever that might be. But really, I always sort of, people say to me, I don't know what my life's purpose is. And I sort of, my philosophy is that there is no such thing as a life purpose. It's going back to that. When you're 18, you have to figure out what you're going to do for the rest of your life. I don't believe in that. I believe that you have a core purpose, which is something quite general, like helping people. And then you go through life, and the beauty of life is you get to experience loads of different ways in which you can express that value. So I know that there is a part of me that at some point wants to express either working in a charity or being the face of a charity, being an ambassador, not coaching. Now, when I'm going to experience that, I haven't planned it. I'm just kind of going to go with the flow and see as and when it happens, but I know that it's on my radar. And I think this is where people just got to say, okay, so these are the ways in which I've identified that I think I could really help people. And now I've just got to pick one that suits me as a person right now, one that suits my lifestyle right now, one where I genuinely think I could make a really big impact, and then go for that. So now I've got an idea of what the dream is. Now I know what the goal is. Where am I now? What are the obstacles? What are the challenges? What are the skills gaps? What do I need in order for me to get to where I am? And what are the actions that I can start to take that will help me build what it is that I need so that I can make this transition from A to B? So I'm making it sound like a really simple process, but when someone comes to me and they literally have no idea what it is that they want to do, it can take anywhere between sort of 6 hours to 8 hours to 10 hours worth of coaching to go through that self-discovery process, particularly people who have spent their whole entire lives waiting for the external environment to tell them what to do. So I'm going to base all of my decisions on what my parents say, on what my teachers say, on what society says, and then they get to 35 and they don't actually know how to make any decisions for themselves. They also don't know who they are or what they love or what they want, because they haven't been listening to themselves, because they've been listening to everyone outside of them. So for some people, it's a really simple process. They come to me and they're like, I know that my core value is this. I just don't know what I want to do with it. And then it's really a case of exploring all of the different ways in which they can express that value and everything else. So that's kind of, from a coaching perspective, it's helping them to get clarity on their values, what they're good at, what they enjoy, and where do they want to go with that. Once we've got clarity on where they want to go with that, that's okay. So what are the things that we need to get you there? And what are the actions that you can start taking from today that will get you from A to B? That's it in a nutshell, really.
Whoa.
Okay.
This is deep.
Yeah. When do I sign up? Okay. So, on a slightly different note,
Yes.
what's the wackiest value?
The wackiest value?
Where you just was like,
That
what?
is a very different note.
Yeah.
Tangent.
What's the wackiest value that you've been confronted with? For better or for worse?
I actually don't think I've ever experienced like a really, really, really wacky one. There are ones where I look at it and I'm like, oh wow, that's interesting. Like I would never have put that as my top value, but they're always within the list of values, or they're always like a typical value. But I would love to be able to say something really wacky right now, but unfortunately I don't have it.
I did something quite interesting. So for my work, we had a career coach come in to help us sort out like everything within the studio that I manage. It was really interesting we were discussing some drivers, and autonomy is an interesting driver that I didn't ever
freedom
think.
Independence, autonomy, it's a big one.
Yeah, it is, but I was like, what? This is one of them?
Yeah.
I don't know, I thought that was strange, just to
but this goes back to what I was saying, in the sense of, I would never put that as my top value, right? But I mean, particularly for men, freedom, number one.
Well, what's interesting, one of my top three, I can't remember the other two, but one of the 1-2s was challenge. That like, I like things that are really challenging, and under pressure I do a lot better. Sometimes. But do you know what I mean? That was quite strange. I was like, how is this a driver? People normally go away from that, but anyway.
Yeah, everyone's individual.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But I thought they were unique and different. Sorry, I answered the question.
Yeah.
Kind of.
No, that's But do you find does it make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, yeah, absolutely.
So what have you done to exercise those values?
This whole thing that you're doing right now, surely,
this whole thing too.
Yeah. Hello. Very challenging, but very rewarding at the same time. Yeah,
super rewarding. Yeah, that was the other one. Like, things need to be meaningful for me to be really like, I will dedicate all my time and energy if I feel like I'm making an impact 100%. And if something's meaningful. It doesn't ever like this right now. This doesn't feel like work whatsoever. Like, I feel like I'm just having a really good chat with good friends. Which is nice.
100%. And that's what they say, when you are in a job where it doesn't feel like work, then you've kind of, you're following your passion. You're following something that is really good for you and meaningful. When you're not in that space, then you need to start to assess, what am I doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things, it's like a blip on my adversity radar. But when I was 21, I went traveling around the world, and quite naively just thought, off I go, and started. The only job I could get the lazy way was a job in construction sites. Okay. So, as in, like, I knew a guy who had a job, got a phone call, got the job, showed up on site.
Was this in Australia?
This is in Sydney.
Okay.
Showed up the next day, ready to go. And it's like, right, see that wall, knock it down. And here's a jackhammer. And I was like, okay. And I'm going to pick this thing up off the floor. I was like, this is 80 kilos. Right. And I've got to knock this wall down. So through that whole 6 months, I had... we'll call it adversity, but it basically taught me the value of like a hard day's work. Yeah. But it changed me, like, from the perspective of, I learned a lot about myself down in Australia, and
down under.
Yeah. But coming out of that is growth. Coming out of that is right. I never want to do that again. I never want to be in that position where I have to take that job, because I hated it. This is my point, going to work every day, waking up 4 a.m. because you'd be all the way across the city, and this is where you had a map. This was 2006, where like I had a paper map in my hand, and I had a circle on the place where I was, and I had to get off the bus at the street, and I had to walk down the streets. And
I miss those days. The map.
Yeah, a paper map. I still have it. I think I still have the map. Anyway, I hated it. I hated going to work. The dread of like getting my little backpack, putting my safety boots on, my shorts, my t-shirt, and walking down the stairs of the apartment block I was into the bus and waiting for the bus. I'll never go back to that.
Yep.
And I'll never complain about a hard day's work, but I'll never go back to that feeling of like, if I'm going to a place where I'm going to spend 8 or 9 hours, I don't want this feeling again.
Yeah.
So lucky for me, I experienced that in a temporary fantasy land of backpacking around the world. And I needed to do it because I needed money, I needed to travel, I needed to fly home. So I knew there was going to be an end date so I could tolerate it. Yeah. But I can't imagine what that feeling is like for people who...
And I'm sure people do that like for 10, 15 years. Like you would know this more. Yeah. People do that?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Wow.
And the worst thing is that they become numb to it. is like, they start living on autopilot. And that's when it becomes quite dangerous, because once you start numbing yourself out to these negative emotions, you're also numbing yourself out to the positive ones. And you just go coasting through life like this, literally like a robot. I think most people come to me is exactly where you were in that level of pain. Like, I'm in pain right now. I do not want to be doing this anymore. I need to get out of this pain. And so, you know, people sometimes say to me, oh, so people pay you to get out of their pain. And I'm like, yeah, if you want to put it that way. And I mean, I had a very similar experience in the sense of, so I was stuck in this job that I just found so mind-numbingly boring. And it was the job that I had before I moved into coaching. I loved the people that I was working with, but I mean, it was a PA office manager job, and that was a job that I'd done in my early 20s, right? So, you know, within 6 months of this job, I was bored. And I remember when I started my coaching, it was about 6 months in, and I remember being on the phone to my business coach in tears, just not being able to manage the stress of the financial uncertainty. And he said to me, Zeta, if it's causing you this much stress, why don't you just go back and get a job? And all of a sudden there was this no, like this huge no inside of me. And then I can't really explain, but this courage to face this adversity of not having the financial income and everything else, that came from a space of knowing that what I was doing was the right thing. And yes, I was going through a very difficult time, and it was hard and it was challenging and all of this other stuff, but it was worth it. And I also knew that there was going to be light at the end of the tunnel as long as I kept focusing on delivering value, making an impact, helping people, and focused on that rather than, I need to make money, I need to make money, I need to make money. Because when you're in that mindset, that's when the fear kicks in. So, you know, people generally are in that mindset of, I've got to make money. I've got to make money, I've got to make money, I've got to make money. And as a result of that, every decision that they're making, including the choice to stay in the job, is based on that. And until they start to think about, what do I want differently for myself? What would my life look like differently? What would my emotional well-being look like differently? What would my physical well-being look like differently if I started to make decisions that were good for me and not bad for me, based on, you know, fulfillment and love and motivation and inspiration, rather than the fear of not having enough money?
What do you say to people who do need to make money? You know, as in they have bills, they have school fees. Well, how do you help them? How do you...
Well, that's really about getting the reality of the situation. You know, if they really need to make money, it depends on where they're at. Like, if they really, really need to make money, okay, so that's the reality of the situation. Start putting a plan in place so that you can start to make money doing something that you love.
I see.
So it's not about just quitting and just going straight for this thing, because I think that would be very irresponsible.
Yeah.
Putting a well-considered, thought-out plan. I mean, I've got one client who... what's the word I'm looking for? He's very cautious, let's put it that way. And we were talking about this dream that he has, but he's got 2 kids that he wants to get through university. And he knows in his current job, he needs to be working in that job for at least another 7, 8, 9 years before he can earn that amount of money. So he had a choice. He could either continue with what he's doing, and we start to put a plan in place so that at the end of that 7, 8 year period, he's good to go, or he takes a risk and maybe brings that plan a little bit forward. And that was his choice. It's not up for me to make that decision for him. So he chose the 7, 8 year plan. So we're now putting a plan in place so that when that time does come, he's ready to go and chase his dream without the fear of having to pay for university fees and all of this kind of stuff. So you've got to work within the mindset of the individual. You want to push them a little bit out of their comfort zone, but not so much so that they are so stressed that it starts to physically affect them.
I think that's a really valid point, because as you were saying before, everybody's different, and you need to really help people find their own path and what feels good and natural for them and safe, but also that they're moving in the right direction. They're really important points.
How does a 7 to 8 year plan look like, just without giving too much details away?
It's very much financial goals. So in order for me to take the risk of setting up my own business, how much money do I need to have in place? Now, I normally say you need really 6 to 9 months of whatever lifestyle you want to lead. So that's your rent, that's your bills, that's your brunches if you're a brunch person, that's your holidays if you're a holiday person. You need to have that buffer ready.
Yeah.
So as long as you've got that, but
9
then also,
months.
I would say 9 months. I mean, some people say 6.
Sure.
Right? And then some people say 12. It just, again, it depends on how risk averse you are, right? So once you've kind of worked out the financials, it's okay. So in order for me to get to where I want to be, what am I deficient in already? Like skills, qualifications, network. Like if you've got 7 years of networking under your belt, when you start that business, you are going to find business development and all of that kind of stuff really quick compared to what other people who don't have a network, who haven't invested that time in doing that. So it's really about, in order for me to make the transition from what I'm doing now into what I want to do as quickly as possible, what are the steps I need to be putting in place right now? So a lot of it is going to be getting the right people, like not necessarily from a business development point of view, but also who could help me with marketing, who could help me with finance, who could help me with this, all of the things that I'm not good at. Who can I start to network with that are going to fill in those gaps for me? Surrounding yourself with the right people, the people who can fill in those gaps, is really, really, really critical. Because going it alone is stressful. You know, when you are trying to do everything on your own and you don't have the support system and the network, it can be really, really stressful. So building a network within that 7 to 8 year period can be a really good thing to do, so that you don't feel so isolated. You don't feel alone. You've got that kind of team behind you. And, you know, so there's loads of things that you can be doing in the 7 to 8 year period. And every time it's, you know, setting yourself new milestones, new goals, so that you're always working towards something within that 7 to 8 year period, so that you're not just, okay, well, I've achieved that, now I can stop.
Yeah.
No, you've got to keep building it. You've got to keep nurturing it. You've got to keep going.
And I suppose then after, that's the kind of thing where 4, 5, 6 years turns around, you're like, do you know what, I could probably go now, or something happens, there's a shift in your market, and then it's like
100%.
Now's the time. It's interesting though, because you've made me look at it differently already, from the point of view of people kind of think, I need to go now, or I need to go like in the next year. Like what, a year? I won't be ready in a year. But all right, put the brakes on a little bit. This kind of stuff is possible in 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And again, just start laying the plan in place.
I think the challenging part there is if you have a really, really long, because I think that's a long time, like it's a long plan, particularly if you're slowly dying inside from the nostalgia of it, but to be able to have things that motivate you along the way, and things that also give you inspiration and growth. And so like you were saying before, like people to get qualified into whatever it is that you want to do, that can inspire you to hang on a little bit more while you're progressing through that that path. Because 8 year plan.
8 year plan. So you've got to have these milestones.
It does sound like a lot.
It does.
But how many people right now do you know that would be like, you could barely get them to do 8 years? Like,
I don't know anyone that could withstand 8 years of a job that they're, and this is different if you're like cruising and content in your job, but if you're really unhappy and you're miserable, 8 years.
But if you've got two kids who are going to go to university, you know, that's your goal.
That's your purpose.
It's not necessarily like I want to feel better and I want to like the people I sit at a desk with. It's like, no, I've got two 10-year-olds, 11-year-olds.
When you have responsibilities like that, they really change your life. And I can understand massively. People who, when they have kids, their driving factor is, you know, making sure that their kids are safe, and which is understandable.
When we're talking about values, this isn't a case of, right now I've identified my values and I've realized what I'm doing doesn't align to those values, so now I've got to completely change what I'm doing. The other option is, how do I align what I'm currently doing to meet those values? So there's a really nice story of this this janitor who was cleaning at a school. And someone said to him, how do you motivate yourself to clean toilets every day? And he simply said, because I know that when I clean these toilets and I am providing a self-healthy environment for these children so they can spend their childhoods playing and enjoying being a kid rather than being sick in hospital. So he aligned. He didn't say, right, I need to suddenly go and change my job and not be a janitor anymore. He changed his perspective. How do I align everything? And for a lot of people, and this is, I think I've seen it in certain cultures, making it about family, making it about the people that you love. It doesn't matter what job you do. You find it fulfilling because you know it has a greater purpose outside of you. I think there are certain cultures, and maybe the Western world is one of them, where we have this social media thing of we must be happy and we must be super positive all the time, and it creates this. Well, if I don't like what I'm doing, I've got to change what I'm doing. Well, maybe that's not actually the best solution in that moment. Maybe the best solution is to look for ways in which you can align what it is that you're doing to your values, start from there, and then make a shift. Because just quitting your job when you've got no money, that's not a sensible decision, right? So you're going to go from hating your job to suddenly hating not having any money.
And hating yourself for making that decision.
And you know, especially like when we were talking before about being in your teens, like when you're in your teens, you've got your parents, so it's easy that they're supporting you along the way. But when you're in your mid-30s and you need a change, you really have to come up with a good plan as to how to create that, because you have phone bills, car bills, house bills, rent, all of these things.
Loans.
Student. There's a lot of other factors, so it needs to be a really considerated.
It does.
The right word?
Yeah. So, what was I going to say there? I think again, the planning. Now we've created this sort of 8-year plan for this other guy, right? But I've already said to him, we can never plan because we have zero control.
Yeah.
Right, we are not in control, and when the moment we think we're in control, it's an illusion. So you've got to be really aware of, you could lose your job tomorrow, and if you lose your job tomorrow, this whole plan is going to change, right? So you can plan as much as you think you can, but you've also got to be super aware of the fact that that plan could change in a minute, and having that freedom and flexibility is really, really key, so that you can go with whatever the world is throwing at you, as opposed to, right, I've got to stick with the plan, I've got to stick with the plan, I've got to stick with the plan. Because the moment you've got that mindset and something changes, it's super stressful. And then you go into this really unresourceful mindset. Right, that's it, I'm just going to go and get a job. Or right, that's it, I'm going to da-da-da. And you lose sight of what it is that you want. So planning is key, 100%. Having the flexibility to recognize that you have no control. So just have a plan, but just don't be a slave to the stepping stones, because those stepping stones might shift. Just be aware of where it is you want to go, focus on that, and then the way in which you get there, just have the flexibility to go with the flow.
That's awesome. I was going to ask you, how would you summarize what we've spoken about, but it sounds like you've just done a pretty good job of it. Where can people get a hold of you? Where can they find you online, your website, social media?
So social media, my particular thing is LinkedIn. So I do all of my social media on LinkedIn, because that's pretty much where my target audience are, and that's where I can add the most value to people, is the careers, the career people, etc. The people who are interested in personal development, a lot of them tend to be on LinkedIn. So you can just Zeta Yarwood onto LinkedIn, and you'll find me there. And in terms of my Zeta Yarwood, and then my website is literally just my name.com, so zetayarwood.com.
Awesome, perfect. Well, this has been really enjoyable. Thanks for coming to speak
so
to us.
Thank you for inviting me. Really good fun.
Thank you so much.
See you again soon.
Cheers,
guys. Bye, guys.